Everybody, what's going on? Helllight here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about a post that Riot Scruffy actually put out on the forums a few days ago, talking about League's gameplay changes over the next few months, and kind of give you guys my thoughts on the subject and what I'm kind of thinking of what Riot have announced they're going to be doing in the future of the game. Now, if you haven't read the post yet, I will have that link down in the description, so you can go ahead and take a look at that. But the practical upshot of it is that Riot gave us a good look at what their immediate focus is, what preseason is going to look like, and what they're generally leaning towards in the far future. First and foremost, their immediate focus is on damage and burst. They're saying that they are significantly too high. Damage is up relative to defenses in the game, and they agree that there is too much burst coming from systemic sources that can stack. So Scorch, Electrocute, Duskblade, Stormrazor, all used together, just annihilates you in one hit straight off the bat, and there isn't very much chance to respond. So Riot are agreeing with the community generally that damage is too high. They've also said that Marksman feels bad still, and that they're trying to tweak them back to being less dominant in the late game, but being able to come online earlier. So by mid game, you are an online marksman. You just won't have quite as much of a stranglehold over the late game as you currently do. For the preseason, Riot have a few goals. They want to make comebacks more achievable and satisfying so the game isn't decided in 10 minutes, but they also want to make it so that decided games resolve faster. So if one team has an insurmountable lead, they can just steamroller out the game and close it out without having to take another 10, 15, even 20 minutes to actually be able to finish off the game. Sort of tangentially related to that, laning phase, they want to make it slightly longer and have champs usually complete one item by the end of it, and have rune paths no longer dictate your stat bonuses, so having a different method of choosing early game stats that you want in addition to the runes that you are taking. So sort of a partial reversion of the swap from runes and masteries in the previous system. Riot's longer term leanings are that too much relearning detracts from the fun, so trying to change League of Legends in a way so that players aren't constantly relearning the game, and creating systems that won't invalidate the way you play. So the current bot lane changes, for example, there was a tremendous amount of variety in the bottom lane. It felt like you could pretty much play anything there that you wanted, but at the same time, if you really enjoyed the double marksman, double support bottom lane, you probably felt like your preferred style of play had been completely annihilated. So Riot are going to, in the future, be looking forward to not adding changes that just completely remove your ability to play the game. Now, that's all kind of a very large summary there, but I just wanted to give my few thoughts on Riot's plans for the future and what I'm kind of thinking initially of these. So first, just about damage, I don't know that I believe it's really that high. I'm in a lot of these situations, I feel like, okay, yeah, the Zed one-shot me, but he was 4-0 by that point, so I deserve to die. That should have happened. I still think as well that it's mostly due to tanks not really being played. Any game in which I have had a frontliner of any degree, even just a Nasus, who's in the face of the enemy team, I feel like the fight ends up dragging out in the way people want it to. There's a lot more tension around burning down front lines, champions holding onto cooldowns, waiting for opportunities to go in and start DPSing in earnest, and I think that in general, the damage isn't too high. I think it's just that you don't have a front line or tanks to fight around because all these other champions are being prioritized over them. So I will listen to Riot. They have more data than me, so they have a better sense of where the game is actually at. But to me personally, I feel like it's just that tanks aren't being played, but whatever they want to do, go for it. I just hope that they don't go too far back in the other direction and that damage isn't high enough. Tanks become immortal, fights just drag on, and nobody dies, so teams end up having to play very safe. Those kinds of things I want to make sure don't happen. I don't want Riot to go too far back in the other direction and just cut damage by, let's say, 15% across the board, as a lot of players have been saying. I don't want them to do that, because that would lead to a host of other problems, like I just kind of talked about. But I do think that if they say damage is too high, sure, find some ways to make it so that these sorts of things don't stack. I think a really easy way to do it is just to make it so that only one rune or potentially one item proc can happen at the same time. I think giving Stormrazor or Duskblade the same unique passive on their first attack bonuses would be a good change so that they can no longer stack together. I think that if you found a way to make it so that Scorch and Electrocute or Scorch and Airy couldn't proc at the same time, maybe that would be a unique way to change it. So like only your first rune, your most powerful rune, will proc, and then if that's on cooldown, then you get the other. So if I initially go onto you, I get some damage down with Aerie. I don't get Scorch. Once Aerie's on cooldown, then if I hit you again, then you get Scorched. Maybe something like that. That's really heavy-handed, but I'm just kind of spitballing right now of things that they could do to change it so that there's not as much front-loaded damage. Moving on to their preseason goals. I think definitely a lot of these are really good. I think having comebacks be more achievable is a good goal. I don't know quite how you're going to be able to do that because I don't think there's much you can do to just give the losing team some kind of benefit. Instead, I would just like to make games closer, but then, like they said, make it so that if it is a decided game, if the enemy team has a 10,000 gold lead by 15 minutes, that the game should basically just end under its own weight. I think a good place to look at this is Rift Herald. I think that Rift Herald already is sort of that mechanic in that if a team is behind and the enemy team takes Herald, well, you'll quite often get 2 towers, even a tower and a half off of the Herald alone, and you have the time to actually do Herald because you are ahead. So I think that looking at Herald and making it more of a game-ending objective to take would be good, because that way a team that's ahead can just walk over, take Herald, and then immediately shove it down the enemy team's throat and win the game off of that. I think that would be a good place to look at to make it so that decided games can resolve faster. I think making comebacks more achievable is going to be very difficult to do. I think that, yeah, you want to make it so that enemy teams have the options to play safe, but you also don't want to make it too easy to turtle up, because then, like we've been talking about before, you just get a lot of really passive gameplay. And that's one of the difficulties with just buff towers, like a lot of people have been saying. I don't think you can just buff towers, because then you end up in a situation where turtling is the best strategy. There's no reason to play aggressively, because towers will kill you the second you get too close to them. They take forever to kill anyways, and it just gives teams that fall behind early. It means that the team that took the early game advantages, that took risks and gained a lead, can't pressure it at all, and therefore de-incentivizes even trying to go for those, because you're risking the game when you could just play safe, farm up, and hope you outscale late. So I do want comebacks to be more achievable. I'm not trying to say I want, if I get first blood, the game just ends because I got first blood. But I do want to make sure that if Riot do make comebacks more achievable, that they do so in a way that encourages proactive play rather than passive waiting for an opportunity. The laning phase changes, I don't know necessarily that's a change I'm looking forward to. I think in general laning phase already lasts long enough for most champions to complete at least one item. I have had very few games recently where laning phase doesn't last long enough for me to at least finish something, or if I haven't finished an item, I've been splitting builds. So for example, if I'm playing a fighter, being able to have Tiamat Phage by the time laning phase ends is good. I don't necessarily care about having the Tiamat Cleaver, because that would be a lot of gold, but at least Tiamat Phage, that sort of thing, I think is fine. So I haven't really noticed that, but I think Riot really want to make sure that every champion has this opportunity, in general in normal games. So again, this might go hand in hand with potential tower buffs on the future. If towers take longer to kill, you're able to come back to lane to protect it much more often, even if you are losing. So you do have more time in lane to get gold and to try and get your first item breakpoint by the time the first tower falls. I think those two might go hand in hand, and that's why Riot are making a big deal about it and talking about it in this post. I don't necessarily think laning phase needs to be longer than it is, but that's just me personally, and I know some people really, really do want it to be longer. The rune path changes is the biggest thing for me, the biggest iffy moment for me, because I think that the reverting to the previous system, which it kind of is, where you decouple stats from the rune style choice. So essentially what you'd end up doing is picking the runes that you want, and then when all is said and done, you also end up picking early game stats that you want. So right now those are all decided by the path you are in. So if I am in Resolve primary and then I take Precision secondary, let's say, I end up with some base starting health and I end up with some base attack speed, are essentially the changes that they have that they would be making there. So but with the new changes, instead of having that sort of thing where the game just kind of decides here's what you get, instead you'd have a system where you would be able to pick all of your runes. So I could still go Resolve and then Precision, but then you get to pick your stats. So if I say I want just raw attack damage, I can take raw AD even though I'm not in Sorcery or Domination. It's sort of a reversion to the previous system where you did have masteries, which are your runes essentially, where you're choosing unique effects that you want in game, and then you have your actual rune system where you're choosing just stat upgrades that you want. I don't know that I like that. I really think that reverting it to the old system, even this partial reversion, so to speak, I think is just a bad thing because runes were never the old runes, I should say, were never very engaging to me personally. I know a lot of players felt the same way. It felt like a solved system, first of all, that you just kind of took these runes because those were the best runes on the character you were playing. There was never any thought process involved. It was sort of just, yeah, this is what I take. And you can't be excited about runes, I think, is the biggest thing. No one cares about starting with 10 bonus armor or 20 bonus movement speed. Nobody really cares. Those kind of selections aren't important to a lot of people and tend to get glossed over more often than not because people look at it and it's just a bunch of numbers and it's hard to feel the effects of those in game, even though they do matter. I'm not saying they don't. Having 10 extra base armor at the beginning of the game can be a huge deal in the right matchups, but it's harder to appreciate as opposed to taking something like Overgrowth, for example, where you get to see every time your health gets bumped up, or Chrysalis, when you get the swap from the health to the attack damage. Those are more recognizable changes and easier to see as opposed to just kind of saying, well, I just have 10 bonus armor and MR in this game. So I don't know that I like this change, but Riot's, apparently this is something the community has been asking for, so it will be coming back. I know I'm probably in the minority here in that I don't like this change, but you know, it will be coming back in the future from the sound of it. Riot will also be doing a light pass on dominant or unused runes, so hopefully this makes it so that a lot of the current runes that are just not very good find a home, and that a lot of the currently too good runes get taken down a peg or two so that they're not quite as good. Anyways, I think Riot definitely do have a lot of changes coming up in the future, and I'm going to be very interested to see how they do end up changing things. Obviously, League of Legends is kind of a game built around change, so we will have some stuff coming up in the preseason that will be swapped around, and I think that's a good thing for the game. I think the game wants to keep evolving and changing. I just hope that Riot find a way to do it that doesn't negate all of the gains they made this season, because I think there were a lot of really good things that they did do in this season. But I think that it came at a high cost, and it would be nice for them to find a way to remove the cost of the changes that they made, and at the same time make it so that the gains they had can stick around and still be there. So, but those are just my thoughts. Go ahead and let me know what you guys are thinking on any of these planned changes in the comment section below. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, link down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.